Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be looking to something a little bit different. A little piece of history. Because I will share this knowledge from my vault with you all. Now, note that this knowledge has been a retcon in Warcraft Chronicles, and it has been retcon again from Warcraft Chronicles, so it might not hold up to the standards of the current WoW lore, and whatever that's worth all its misery. But anyway, let's get started with the beginning of this history of Warcraft series with one of my favorites, and well, the first one in chronological order, the mythology of the Titans. No one knows exactly how the universe began. Some theorize that a catastrophic cosmic explosion sent the infinite world spinning out into the vastness of the great dark. Worlds, worlds that would one day bear life, forms of wondrous and terrible diversity. Others believe that the universe, as it exists, was created as a whole by a singular, all powerful entity. True, though the exact origins of this chaotic universe remains pretty much unclear. It is clear, though, that a race of powerful beings arose to bring order to the various worlds and ensure a safe future for the beings that would follow into their footsteps. The Titans, colossal metallic skinned gods from the far reaches of the cosmos, came forward and set to work on the worlds they encountered. They shaped the form of their worlds by raising high and mighty mountains and dredging out vast seas. They breathed skies and raging atmospheres into being, all part of their unfathomable, far-sighted plan to create order out of chaos. They even empowered primitive races to tend to their works and maintain the integrity of their respective worlds. The Titans, ruled by an elite sect known as the Pantheon, brought order to 100 million worlds scattered throughout the great dark beyond during the first ages of creation. The benevolent Pantheon, seeking to safeguard their structured worlds, was ever vigilant against the threat of attack from vile extra-dimensional entities coming from the twisting nether. The nether, an ethereal dimension of chaotic magics that connected the myriad worlds of the universe together, was home to an infinite number of malefic and demonic beings who sought only to destroy life and devour the energies of the living universe. Now, there's two versions of this story, and not really it's not really that different from one another. There's a version that appeared in the game, and there's a version that appeared on the site. Again, this has been the mythology of the Titans. Thank you for watching. Hello and welcome. In this next series of our history of Warcraft, we will be looking at a text that has been modified. Luckily enough, we will be looking at the old one because the new one is modified. And I like original things that are not modified, even if the story in them doesn't really make that much sense. So let us begin. Sargeras and the Betrayal. Over time, demonic entities made their ways into the Titans' worlds from the twisting nether, and thus the Pantheon elected its greatest warrior, Sargeras, to act as its first line of defense. A noble giant of molten bronze, Sargeras carried out his duties for countless millennia, seeking out and destroying these demons whenever he could find them. Over the eons, though, Sargeras encountered two powerful demonic races, both of which were bent on gaining power and dominance over the physical universe. The Eredar, an insidious race of devilish sorcerers, used their warlock magics to invade and enslave a number of worlds. The indigenous race of those worlds were mutated by the Eredar's malevolent powers and turned into demons themselves. Though Sargeras' nearly limitless power were more than enough to defeat the vile Eredar, he was greatly troubled by the creature's corruption and all-consuming evil. Incapable of fathoming such depravity, the great Titan began to slip into brooding depression. Despite his growing unease, Sargeras rid the universe of the warlocks by trapping them within a corner of the twisting nether. While his confusion and misery deepened, Sargeras was forced to contend with another group intent on disrupting the Titan's orders, the Natrazim. The dark race of vampiric demons, also known as Dreadlords, conquered a number of populated worlds by possessing their inhabitants and turning them into shadow. The nefarious, scheming Dreadlords turned whole nations against one another by manipulating them into unthinking hatred and mistrust. Sargeras defeated the Natrazim easily, but their corruption affected him deeply. As doubt and despair overwhelmed Sargeras' senses, he lost all faith, not only in his mission, but also in the Titan's vision of an ordered universe. Eventually, he came to believe that the concept of order itself was folly, and that the chaos and depravity were the only absolutes within this dark and lonely universe. His fellow Titans tried to pursue him of his error and calm his raging emotions, but he disregarded their more optimistic beliefs as self-serving delusions. Storming from their ranks forever, Sargeras set out to find his own place in the universe. Although the Pantheon was sorrowful at his departure, the Titans could never have predicted just how far this lost brother would go. By the time Sargeras' madness had consumed the last vestiges of his valiant spirit, he believed that the Titans themselves were responsible for creation's failure, deciding, at last, to undo their work throughout the universe. He resolved to form an unstoppable army that would set the physical universe aflame. Even Sargeras' titanic form became distorted from the corruption that plagued his once noble heart. His eyes, hair, and beard erupted in fire, and his metallic bronze skin split open to reveal an endless furnace of blistering hate. And his fury, Sargeras shattered the prisons of the Eredar and the Natrazim and set the loathsome demons free. These cunning creatures bowed before the Dark Titan's vast rage and offered to serve him in whatever malicious ways they could. From the ranks of the powerful Eredar, Sargeras picked 2 champions to command his demonic armies of destruction. Kil'jaeden the Deceiver was chosen to seek out the darkest races in the universe and recruit them into Sargeras' ranks. The second champion, Archimonde the Defiler, was chosen to lead Sargeras' vast armies into battle against any who might resist the Titan's will. Kil'jaeden's first move was to enslave the vampiric Dreadlords under his terrible power. The Dreadlords served as his personal agents throughout the universe, and they took pleasure in locating primitive races for their master to corrupt and bring into the fold. First among the Dreadlords was Tichondrius the Darkener. Tichondrius served Kil'jaeden as a perfect soldier, and agreed to bring Sargeras' burning will to all the dark corners of the universe. The mighty Archimonde also empowered agents of his own, calling upon malefic pit lords and their barbarous leader, Manaroth the Destructor. Archimonde hoped to establish a fighting elite that would scour creation of all his life. Once Sargeras saw that his armies were amassed and ready to follow his every command, he launched his raging forces into the vastness of the Great Dark. He referred to his growing army as the Burning Legion. To this date, it is still unclear how many worlds they consumed and burned on their holy burning crusade across the universe. Thank you for watching. Hello and welcome. This time around the history of Warcraft, we'll be looking at a more dark part of our history and, well, something that was once interesting, to say the least. The Old Gods and the Ordering of Azeroth. Unaware of Sargeras' mission to undo their countless work, the Titans continued to move from world to world, shaping and ordering each planet as they saw fit. They, along their journey, they happened upon a small world that its inhabitants would later name Azeroth. As the Titans made their way across the primordial landscape, they encountered a number of hostile elemental beings. These elementals, who worshipped a race of unfathomably evil beings known only as the Old Gods, vowed to drive the Titans back and keep their world inviolate from the invaders' metallic touch. The Pantheon, disturbed by the Old Gods' penance for evil, waged war upon the elementals and their dark masters. The Old Gods' armies were led by the most powerful elemental lieutenants: Ragnaros, the Fire Lord; Trazan, the Stone Mother; Alakir, the Wind Lord; and Neptulon, the Tide Hunter. Their chaotic forces raged across the face of the world and clashed with the colossal Titans. Though the elementals were powerful beyond mortal comprehension, their combined forces could not stop the mighty Titans. One by one, the elemental lords fell, and their forces dispersed. The Pantheon shattered the old gods' citadels and chained the 5 evil gods far beneath the surface of the world. Without the old gods' power to keep their raging spirits bound to the physical world, the elementals were banished to an abyssal plane, where they would contend with one another for all eternity. With the elementals' departure, nature calmed, and the world settled into peaceful harmony. The Titans saw that the threat was contained and set to work. The Titans empowered a number of races to help them fashion the world, to help them carve out the fathomless caverns beneath the earth. The Titans created the dwarf-like Earthen from magical living stone, to help them dredge out the seas and lift the land from the seafloor. The Titans created the immense but gentle sea giants. For many ages, the Titans moved and shaped the earth, until at last there remained one perfect continent. At the continent's center, the Titans crafted a lake of skittling energies. The lake, which they named the Well of Eternity, was to be the fount of life for all the world. Its potent energies would nurture the bones of the world and empower life to take root in the land's rich soil. Over time, plants, trees, monsters, and creatures of every kind began to thrive out the primordial continent. As twilight fell on the day of their labors, the Titans named the continent Kalimdor, the land of eternal starlight. Interesting thing to note in this story is that in the Warcraft 3 manual, it is mentioned that there were 5 old gods. World of Warcraft retconned it at some point to 4, until they retconned it again back to 5. But one of them was created and engineered to be like that. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hello and welcome. Today we'll be looking at Charge of the Dragonflights, which is one of my favorites because I like dragons. Satisfied that the small world that had been ordered and that their work was done, the Titans prepared to leave Azeroth. However, before they departed, they charged the greatest species of the world, the Dragonflights, with the task of watching over Kalimdor, lest any force should threaten its perfect tranquility. There were many dragon flights in that age. There were 5 flights that held dominion over their brethren. It was these flights that the Titans chose to shepherd the budding world. The greatest member of the pantheons imbued a portion of their power upon each of the flight's leader. These majestic dragons, as we'll hear below, became known as the Great Aspects, or the Dragon Aspects. Amantul, the High Father of the Pantheon, bestowed a portion of his cosmic power upon the massive bronze dragon Nosdormu. The High Father empowered Nosdormu to guard time itself and police the ever-spinning pathways of fate and destiny. The stoic, honorable Nosdormu became thus known as the Timeless One. Eleanor, the Titan patron of life, gave a portion of her power to the Red Leviathan, yeah, that's kind of a weird one. Alexstrasza. Don't know why I got so confused with that one. Ever after, Alexstrasza would be known as the Lifebinder, and she would work to safeguard all living creatures within the world. Due to her supreme wisdom and limitless compassion for all living things, Alexandra was crowned the Dragon Queen and given dominion over her kind. Eleanor also blessed Alexstrasza's younger sister, the light green dragon Ysera, with a portion of nature's influence. Ysera fell into an eternal trance, bound to the waking dream of creation, known as the Dream. She would watch over the growing wilds of the world from her verdant realm, the Emerald Dream. Norganon, the Titan lorekeeper and master magician, granted the blue dragon Malagos a portion of his vast power. From then on, Malagos would be known as the Spellweaver and Guardian of Magic and Hidden Arcanum. Kazgoroth, the Titan shaper and forger of the world, bestowed some of his vast power upon the mighty black worm Neltarion. The great-hearted Neltarion, known afterwards as the Earth Warder, was given dominion over the earth and deep places of the world. He embodied the strength of the world and served as Alexstrasza's greatest supporter. Thus empowered, the 5 aspects were charged with the world's defense in the Titans' absence. With the dragons prepared to safeguard their creation, the Titans left Azeroth behind forever. Unfortunately, it was only a matter of time before Sargeras learned of this newborn world. Now, I know I normally do these with in-game stuff, and that's what the history of Warcraft is based on. But on the site, there's this Charge of the Dragonflight, which is so small and it's so different that, you know what, I'm just gonna read it even though I might dislike it. Satisfied that the small world has been ordered and that their work was done, the Titans prepared to leave Azeroth. However, before they departed, they charged the greatest species of the world with the task of watching over Kalimdor, lest any force should threaten its perfect tranquility. In that age, there were many dragonflights, yet there were 5 flights that held dominion over their brethren. That's all. Thank you for watching. Hello and welcome. Today we'll be going through a bit that might really be enjoyable to all the Night Elf players out there. And that's the Caldrai and the Well of Eternity. 10,000 years before the orcs and humans clashed in the First War, the world of Azeroth cradled only one massive continent surrounded by infinite raging seas. The landmass, known as Kalimdor, was home to a number of disparate races and creatures, all vying for survival amongst the savage elements of the waking world. At the dark continent's center was a mysterious lake of incandescent energies. The lake, which would later be called the Well of Eternity, was the true heart of the world's magic and natural power. Drawing its energies from the infinite great dark beyond the world, the well acted as a mystical font, sending its potent energies out across the world to nourish life in all its wondrous forms. In a time, a primitive tribe of nocturnal humanoids cautiously made their way to the edges of the mesmerizing enchanted lake. The feral nomadic humanoids, drawn by the whale's strange energies, built crude homes upon its tranquil shores. Over the time, the whale's cosmic power affected that strange tribe, making them stronger, wise, and virtually immortal. The tribe adopted the name Caldrai, which meant children of the stars in their native tongue. To celebrate their budding society, they constructed great structures and temples around the lake's periphery. The Caldari, or Nidos as they would later be known, worshipped the moon goddess Elune and believed that she slept within the well's shimmering depths during the daylight hours. The early Night Elf priests and seers studied the well with an insatiable curiosity, driven to plumb its untold secrets and power. As their society grew, the Night Elves explored the breadth of Kalandor and encountered its myriad of denizens. The only creatures that gave them pause were the ancient and powerful dragons. Though the great serpentine beasts were often reclusive, they did much to safeguard the known lands from potential threats. The Night Elves believed that the dragons held themselves to be protectors of the world, and that they and their secrets were best left alone. In time, the Night Elves' curiosity led them to meet and befriend a number of powerful entities, not the least which was Cenarius, a mighty demigod of the primordial forestlands. The great-hearted Cenarius grew fond of the inquisitive Night Elves and spent a great deal of time teaching them about the natural world. The tranquil Caldroi developed a strong empathy for the living forest of Kalandor and revealed in the harmonious balance of nature. Yet, as the seemingly endless ages passed, the Night Elf civilization expanded both territorially and culturally. Their temples, roads, and dwelling places stretch across the breadth of the Dark Continent. Ajara, the Night Elf's beautiful and gifted queen, built an immense, wondrous palace on the well's shore that housed her favorite servitors within its bejeweled halls. Her servitors, whom she called the Queldorai, or Highborn, doted on her every command and believed themselves to be greater than the rest of their lower caste brethren. Though Queen Ajara was loved equally by all of her people, the Highborn were secretly hated by the jealous masses. Sharing the priest's curiosity towards the well of eternity, Ajara ordered the educated Highborn to plumb its secrets and reveal its true purpose in the world. The Highborn buried themselves in their work and studied the well ceaselessly. In time, they developed the ability to manipulate and control the well's cosmic energies. As their reckless experiments progressed, the Highborn found that they could use their newfound powers to either create or destroy at their leisure. The hapless Highborn had stumbled upon primitive magic and were now resolved to devote themselves to its mastery. Although they agreed that magic was inherently dangerous if held irresponsibly, Ajara and her Highborn began to practice their spellcraft with reckless abandon. Cenarius and many of the wizened Night Elf scholars warned that only calamity will result from toying with the clearly volatile arts of magic. But Ajara and her followers stubbornly continued to expand their burgeoning powers. As their powers grew, a distinct change came from Ajara and the Highborn. The haughty, aloof upper class became increasingly callous and cruel towards their fellow Night Elves. A dark, brooding pale veiled Ajara's veil. Brooding pale veiled Ajara's once entracing body. She began to withdraw from her loving subjects and refused to interact with any but her trusted highborn priests. A young brazen scholar named Furion Stormrage, who had spent much of his time studying the will's effects, began to suspect that a terrible power was corrupting the highborn and his beloved queen. Though he could not convince the evil that was to come, He knew that the Night Elves' lives would soon be changed forever. Hello and welcome. Today we'll be looking at what happened after the Well of Eternity and the Queen Ajara decided to become more reclusive. The War of the Ancients. The Highborn's reckless use of magics and ripples of energy spiraling out from the Well of Eternity and into the great dark beyond. The streaming ripples of energy were filled by terrible alien minds. Sargeras, the great enemy of all life, the destroyer of worlds, felt the felt the potent ripples and was drawn to their distant point of origin. Spying the primordial world of Azeroth and sensing the limitless energies of the Well of Eternity, Sargeras was consumed by an insatiable hunger. The great Dark Lord of the Nameless Void resolved to destroy the fledgling world and claim its energies as his own. Sargeras gathered his vast burning legion and made his way towards the unsuspecting world of Azeroth. The legion was comprised of millions of screaming demons, all ripe from the far corners of the universe, and the demons hungered for conquest. Sargeras' lieutenant, Archimon the Defiler, and Manroth the Destructor prepared their infernal minions to strike. Queen Ajara, overwhelmed by the terrible ecstasy of her magic, fell victim to Sargeras' undeniable power and agreed to grant him entrance to her world. Even her highborn servitors gave themselves over to magic's inevitable corruption and began to worship Sargeras as their god. To show their allegiance to the Legion, the Highborn aided their queen in opening a vast, swirling portal within the depths of the Well of Eternity. Once all his preparations had been made, Sargeras began his catastrophic invasion of Azeroth. The warrior demon of the Burning Legion stormed into the world through the Well of Eternity and laid siege to the Night Elf sleeping cities. Led by Archimand and Manoroth, the Legion swarmed over the lands of Kalimdor, leaving only ash and sorrow in its wake. The demon warlocks called down searing infernals that crashed like hellish meteors into the graceful spires of Kalimdor's temples. A band of burning, bloodletting killers known as Doomguard marched across Kalimdor's fields, slaughtering everyone in their path. Packs of wild demonic fellhounds ravaged the countryside unopposed. Though the brave Caldrai warriors rushed there to defend their ancient homeland, they were forced to give ground, inch by inch, before the fury of the Legion's onslaught. It fell to Malfurion Stormrage to find help for his beleaguered people. Stormrage, whose own brother Illidan practiced the Highborn's magic, was incensed by the growing corruption amongst the upper class. Convincing Illidan to forsake his dangerous obsession, Malfurion set out to find Cenarius and muster a resistance force. The beautiful young priestess, Tyrande, agreed to accompany the brothers in the name of Elune. Though Malfurion and Illidan shared a love for the idealistic priestess, Tyrande's heart belonged to Malfurion alone. Illidan resented his brother's budding romance with Tyrande, but knew that his heartache was nothing compared to the pain of his magical addiction. Illidan, who had grown dependent on magic's empowering energies, struggled to keep control of his nearly overwhelming hunger to tap the well's energies once again. However, with Tyrande's patient support, he was able to restrain himself and help his brother find the reclusive demigod Cenarius. Cenarius, who dwelt within the sacred moonglades of the distant Mount Hyjal, agreed to help the Night Elves by finding the ancient dragons and enlisting their aid. The dragons, led by the great red Leviathan Alexstrasza, agreed to send their mighty flights to engage the demons and their infernal masters. Cenarius, calling on the spirits of the enchanted forest, rallied an army of ancient treemen and led them against the Legion in a daring ground assault. As the Night Elves' allies converged upon Ajara's temple and the Well of Eternity. All-out warfare erupted. Despite the strength of their newfound allies, though, Malfurion and his colleagues realized the Legion could not be defeated by martial strength alone. As the titanic battle raged around Ajara's capital city, the delusional queen waited in anticipation for Sargeras' arrival. The Lord of the Legion was preparing to pass through the Well of Eternity and enter the ravaged world. As his impossibly huge shadow drew ever closer to the well's raging surface, Ajargar, the most powerful of her highborn followers, only by linking their magics together in one focused spell would they be able to create a gateway large enough for Sargeras to enter. As the battle raged across the burning fields of Kalimdor, a terrible turn of events unfolded. The details of the events have been lost to time. But it is known that Neltarion, the dragon aspect of the earth, went mad during a critical engagement against the Burning Legion. He began to split apart as flame and rage erupted from his dark hide. Renaming himself Deathwing, the burning dragon turned on his brethren and drove the 5 dragonflights from the battlefield. Deathwing's sudden betrayal was so destructive that the 5 dragonflights never truly recovered. Wounded and shocked, Alexstrasza and the other noble dragons were forced to abandon their mortal allies. Malfurion and his companions, now hopelessly outnumbered, barely survived the ensuing onslaught. Malfurion, convinced that the Well of Eternity was the demon's umbilical line to the physical world, insisted that it should be destroyed. His companions, knowing that the well was the source of their immortality and powers, were horrified by the rash notion. Yet Tyrande saw the wisdom of Malfurion's theory, so she convinced Cenarius and their comrades to storm Ajar's temple and find a way to shut down the well for good. More is expanded upon the War of the Ancients in the War of the Ancients trilogy books, which I highly recommend. Thank you for watching. Today we'll be looking at the Sundering of the World, and continue the story from War of the Ancients. Knowing that the Sunwell's destruction would prevent him from ever wielding magic again, Illidan selfishly abandoned the group and set out to warn the Highborn of Malfurion's plan. Due to the insanity brought on by his addiction and the stinging resentment towards his brother's affair with Tyrande, Illidan felt no remorse at betraying Malfurion and siding with Ajara and her ilk. Above all else, Illidan vowed to protect the world's power by any means necessary. Heartbroken by his brother's departure, Malfurion led his companions into the heart of Ajara's temple. Yet as they stormed into the main audience chamber, they found the Highborn in the midst of their final dark incantation. The communal spell created an unstable vortex of power within the well's turbulent depths. As Sargeras' ominous shadow drew ever closer to the surface, Malfurion and his allies rushed to attack. Ajara, having received Illidan's warning, was more than prepared for them. Nearly all of Malfurion's followers fell before the Mad Queen's power. Tyrande, attempting to attack Ajara from behind, was caught off guard by the Queen's highborn guardsmen. Though she vanquished the guardsmen, Tyrande suffered grievous wounds at their hands. When Malfurion saw his love fall, he went into a murderous rage and resolved to end Ajara's life. As the battle raged inside and outside of the temple, Illidan appeared from the shadows near the shores of the Great Well, producing a set of specially crafted vials. Illidan knelt and filled each with the well's shimmering waters. Convinced that the demons would crush the Night Elves' civilization, he planned to steal the sacred waters and keep their energies for himself. The ensuing battle between Malfurion and Ajara threw the Highborn's carefully crafted spellwork into chaos. The unstable vortex within the well's depths exploded and ignited a catastrophic chain of events that will sunder the world forever. The massive explosion rocked the temple to its foundation and sent massive quakes ripping through the tortured earth. As the horrific battle between the Legion and the Night Elves' allies raged around and above the ruined city, The surging will of eternity bucked, buckled in upon itself and collapsed. The resultant catastrophic explosion shattered the earth and blotted out the skies. As the aftershock from the well's implosion rattled the bones of the world, the sea rushed in to fill the gaping wound left into the earth. Nearly 80% of Kalimdor's landmass had been blasted apart, leaving only a handful of separate continents surrounding the new raging sea. At the center of this new sea, where the Will of Eternity once stood, was a tumultuous storm of tidal fury and chaotic energies. The terrible scar, known now as the Maelstrom, would never cease its furious spinning. It would remain a constant reminder of the terrible catastrophic event and the utopian era that had been lost forever. Somehow, against all odds, Queen Ajara and her highborn elite managed to survive the ordeal. Tortured and twisted by the powers they had released, Ajara and her followers were dragged down beneath the raging sea by the well's implosion. Cursed, transformed, they took on the new shapes and became the hateful serpentine Naga. Ajara herself expanded with hate and rage, becoming a massive monstrosity, reflecting the wickedness and malice that she had always hidden within her core. There, at the bottom of the Maelstrom, the Naga built for themselves a new city, Najatar, from which they would rebuild their power. It would take over 10,000 years before the Naga would reveal their existence to the surface. Hello and welcome. Today we'll be looking at Mount Hyjal and Illidan's Gift. The few Night Elves that survived the horrific explosion rallied together on crudely made rafts and slowly made their way to the only landmass they had in sight. Somehow, by the grace of Elune, Malfurion, Tyrande, and Cenarius, had survived the great Sundering. The weary heroes agreed to lead their fellow survivors and establish a new home for their people. As they journeyed in silence, they surveyed the wreckage of their world and realized that their passion had wrought the destruction all around them. Though Sargeras and his legions had been ripped from the world by the well's destruction, Malfurion and his companions were left to ponder the terrible cost of victory. There were many highborn who survived the cataclysm unscathed. They made their way to the shores of the new land, along with the other Night Elves. Though Malfurion mistrusted the highborn's motivation, he was satisfied that they could cause no real mischief without the well's energies. As the weary mass of Night Elves landed upon the shores of the new land, they found that the holy mountain, Hyjal, had survived the catastrophe, whatever. Seeking to establish a new home for themselves, Malfurion and the Night Elves climbed the slopes of Hyjal and reached its windswept summit. As they descended upon the wooded bow, and nested between the mountain's enormous peaks, they found a small, tranquil lake. To their horror, they found that the lake's waters have been fouled by magic. Illidan, having survived the Sundering as well, had reached Hyjal's summit long before Malfurion and the Night Elves. In this mad bid to maintain the flows of magic in the world, Illidan had poured his vials, which contained the precious water from the Well of Eternity, into the mountain lake. The well's potent energies quickly ignited and coalesced into a new Well of Eternity. The exponent Illidan, believing that the new well was a gift for future generations, was shocked when Malfurion hunted him down. Malfurion explained to his brother that magic was innately chaotic, and that its use would inevitably lead to widespread corruption and strife. Still, Illidan refused to relinquish his magical powers. Knowing full well where Illidan's ruthless schemes would eventually lead, Malfurion decided to deal with his power-crazed brother once and for all. With Cenarius' help, Malfurion sealed Illidan within a vast underground barrow prison, where he would remain unchained and powerless until the end of time. To ensure his brother's containment, Malfurion empowered the young warden, Maya of Shadowsong, to be Illidan's personal jailer. Concerned that destroying the new well might bring about an even greater catastrophe, the Night Elves resolved to leave it be. However, Malfurion declared that they will never practice the arts of magic again, and under the watchful eye of Cenarius, they began to study the ancient arts of Druidism that would enable them to heal the ravaged earth and regrow their beloved forest at the base of Mount Hyjal. Spiel: The World Tree and the Emerald Dream. For many years, the Night Elves worked tirelessly to rebuild what they could of their ancient homeland. Leaving their broken temples and roads to be overgrown, they constructed their new homes amidst the verdant trees and shadowed hills at Hyjal's base. In time, the dragons that had survived the great Sundering came forth from their secret abodes. Alexstrasza the Red, Ysera the Green, and Nosdormu the Bronze descended upon the druid's tranquil glade and surveyed the fruits of the Night Elves' labors. Malfurion, who had become an archdruid of immense power, greeted the mighty dragons and told them about the creation of the Well of Eternity. The great dragons were alarmed to hear the dark news, and speculated that as long as the well remained, the Legion might one day return and assault the world once again. Malfurion and the three dragons made a pact to keep the well safe, and to ensure that the agents of the Burning Legion would never find their way back into this world. Alexstrasza, the Lifebinder, placed a single enchanted acorn within the heart of the Well of Eternity. The acorn, activated by the potent magical water, sprang to life as a colossal tree. The mighty tree's roots grew from the well's waters, and its verdant canopy seemed to scrap the roof of the sky. The immense tree would be an everlasting symbol of the Night Elf's bond with nature, and its life-giving energies would extend out to heal the rust of the world over time. The Night Elves gave their world tree the name Nordrassil, which meant crown of the heavens in their native tongue. Nosdormu, the Timeless One, placed an enchantment upon the world tree to ensure that as long as the colossal tree stood, the Night Elves will never age or fall prey to sickness or disease. Ysera the Dreamer also placed an enchantment upon the world tree by linking it to her own realm, the ethereal dimension known as the Emerald Dream. The Emerald Dream, a vast, ever-changing spirit world, existed outside the boundaries of the physical world. From the dream, Ysera regulated the ebb and flow of nature and its evolutionary path of the world itself. The Night Elf Druids, including Malfurion himself, were bound to the dream through the World Tree. As part of their mystical pact, the Druids agreed to sleep for centuries at a time so that their spirit could roam the infinite paths of Ysera's dreamways. Though the Druids were grieved at the prospect of losing so many years of their lives in hibernation, they selflessly agreed to uphold their bargain with Ysera. The Exile of the High Elves. As the centuries passed, the Night Elves' new society grew strong and expanded throughout the budding forest that they came to call Ashenvale. Many of the creatures and species that were abundant before the Great Sundering, such as furbolgs and quillboars, reappeared and flourished in these lands. Under the Druids' benevolent leadership, the Night Elves enjoyed an era of unprecedented peace and tranquility under the stars. However, many of the original Highborn survivors grew restless. Like Illidan before them, they fell victim to the withdrawal that came from the loss of their coveted magics. They were tempted to tap the energies of the Well of Eternity and explode in their magical practices. Remar, the brash, outspoken leader of the Highborn, began to mock the Druids publicly, calling them cowards for refusing to wield the magic that he said was theirs by right. Malfurion and the Druids dismissed Dathremar's arguments and warned that the Highborn that any use of magic would be punishable by death. In an insolent and ill-fated attempt to convince the Druids to recite their law, Dathremar and his followers unleashed a terrible magical storm upon Ashenvale. The Druids could not bring themselves to put so many of their kin to death. So they decided to exile the reckless Highborn from their lands. Dahremar and his followers, glad to be rid of their conservative cousins at last, boarded a number of specially crafted ships and set sail upon the seas. Though none of them knew what awaited them beyond the waters of the raging Maelstrom, they were eager to establish their own homeland, where they could practice their coveted magic with impunity. The Highborn, or Caldrai, as Azara had named them in ages past, would eventually set shore upon the eastern land men would call Lordaeron. They planned to build their own magical kingdom, Quel'Thalas, and reject the Night Elves' precepts of moon worship and nocturnal activity. Forever after, they would embrace the sun and be known as the High Elves. The Sentinels and the Long Vigil. With the departure of their wayward cousins, the Night Elves turned their attention back to safekeeping their land. The Druids, sensing that their time of hibernation was drawing near, prepared to sleep and leave their loved ones and families behind. Tyrande, who became the High Priestess of Elune, asked her love, Malfurion, not to leave her for Ysera's Emerald Dream. But Malfurion was honor-bound to enter the changing dreamways. He bid the priestess farewell and swore that they would never be apart as long as they held true to their love. Left alone to protect Kalimdor from the dangers of the New World, Tyrande assembled a powerful fighting force from amongst her Night Elf sisters. The fearless, highly trained warrior women who pledged themselves to Kalimdor's defense became known as the Sentinels. Though they preferred to patrol the shadowy forests of Ashenvale on their own, they had many allies upon which they could call in time of urgency. The demigod Cenarius remained nearby in the moonglades of Mount Hyjal. His sons, known as the Keepers of the Grove, kept close watch on the Night Elves and regularly helped the Sentinels maintain peace in the land. Even Cenarius's shy daughters, the Dryads, appeared in the open with increasing frequency. The task of policing Ashenvale kept Tyrande busy, but without Malfurion at her side, she knew little joy. As long as the centuries passed while the Druids slept, her fears of a second demonic invasion grew. She could not shake the unnerving feeling that the Burning Legion might still be out there, beyond the great dark of the sky, plotting its revenge upon the Night Elves and the world of Azeroth. This was the history of Warcraft, Chapter 1. It was a nice take, really refreshing to go through all this story once more. Thank you for watching.